Republican Florida Senator Marco Rubio joins us now. Senator, welcome.
Thank you.
First, want to get your reaction to Biden inviting the UN to examine the U.S.'s record on racism. Is this a good idea?
Well, not only is it stupid, but it actually, why isn't he convening the United Nations Security Council to talk about the fact that this Sunday and throughout the week, a regime 90 miles from our shores has been killing people because they went out demanding liberty? That's what they should be looking at. So if you're going to invite the UN to come in the U.S. to tell us how racist we are, you should at least also ask them to look into the horrifying situation that's unfolding in Cuba, a borderline, an epic catastrophe that's spiraling out of control. Where's that invested? Why aren't they focused on that? It's just honestly, you wake up every day, you read these things, and it's like, this can't be real. It almost feels like it's something from The Onion or one of these satire websites. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm out of words.
Senator Rubio, the Secretary of State, described it this way. He said responsible nations must not shrink from scrutiny of their human rights record. Rather, they should acknowledge it with the intent to improve. Here's what the press secretary said when questioned by our Peter Ducey about it.
As the Secretary said in his statement, he believes responsible nations must not shrink from scrutiny of their human rights record. Rather, they should acknowledge it with the intent to improve it, and also push and lift up and shine a light on other countries that need to do better. And that is the role we're playing here from the United States.
So the basic premise here is that, if you want to have the moral high ground on human rights, you need to show transparency. But what nation on the planet has been more transparent than the United States when it comes to our history and what goes on here on a daily basis?
Yeah, I have a record second to none, and I'm proud to say it, on human rights in the United States Senate. Okay, no one, we have some great partners across the aisle and on our side, but no one has done more on human rights, from the Uyghur bill we passed just yesterday, which was my bill, on nation after nation. You look at a human rights cause somewhere in the world, and I've been among, if not the loudest voice on it, okay? So let me tell you, everybody, I assure you of this. There are like 199 other countries that we should worry about on human rights before we get to America. In America, we have transparency. Okay? In America, we have a press that covers whatever they want. Sometimes they lie, sometimes they cover, sometimes it's a half-truth. But you do something wrong in America, it's all over the place. We have a system of courts. We have people go to jail here because they do things that are not right. And so I think that before you get to the human rights record of the U.S., if you're going to rank them in order of problematic, there's like 199 other places we'd have to deal with first.
Wow, very powerful response to that. Also want to get your response to BLM, Black Lives Matter, weighing in on the chaos in Cuba. Obviously a story near and dear to your heart. Black Lives Matter condemns, this is their statement, the U.S. federal government's inhumane treatment of Cubans and urges it to immediately lift the economic embargo. Senator, is it the U.S.'s fault for what is happening in Cuba and the lack of freedoms those people have? Because the last I saw, they were waving the American flag, chanting freedom.
Yeah, the first thing, let me tell you that the only reason why I even addressed the Black Lives Matter, that's an organization that put that out there. The only reason I even address it is because they have shaken down multiple U.S. corporations to the tune of millions and millions of dollars that then they use for their leader, by the way, a trained Marxist, as she called herself, to go out and spend a bunch of money in a spa resort and actually bought herself a multi-million-dollar home. They are charlatans. They are a Ponzi scheme. They are a fraud. So that's the only reason I care about them, is because they've shaken down and continue to shake down corporations. Now, in the case of the embargo, the only embargo on Cuba is the one the Cuban government has imposed on its own people. Do you know who the #1 food exporter to Cuba is? The United States of America. Do you know that we send over $200 million a year in medicine and humanitarian supplies? You know that over $3 billion, which is a significant percentage of their overall economy, are remittances from Cuban Americans to their family members? What the embargo in Cuba is, the Cuban government will not allow a Cuban to own a business. You can't open a hardware store in Cuba. They won't let you. You fishermen can't sell their fish to people in Cuba. Farmers can't sell their food. They're the ones that have an embargo against their own people. If they allow their people to open businesses, there's nothing in the law that prohibits us from being able to do business with independent people. What you can't do business with is a military-owned company that controls that revenue and then uses it to control and repress people.
The Black Lives Matter senators' rationale for saying what it said about the United States and Cuba is this. They say, quote, Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, from protecting black revolutionaries like Assata Shakur through granting her asylum, to supporting black liberation struggles in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and South Africa. Assata Shakur, whose real name is Joanne Chesimard, was declared a terrorist by the U.S. government. She was convicted of the first-degree murder of a New Jersey state trooper. And Fidel Castro was notorious for exporting bloody revolution to countries where he was trying to prop up pro-communist regimes. So who's on the right side of history here?
Well, first of all, again, I just hate talking about these because they're charlatans. They're posers. They're fake. They're just there to steal money from people.
But they
and
have
make
an
money
audience
off of this. Well, I hope the audience sees who they are now. So let me say two things. Yes, that she's a cop killer. I mean, she murdered a trooper. And that tells you everything you need to know about that organization. And here's another point I would make about those of African descent. I don't know if people know this, but if you watch the videos, it's pretty obvious. Cuba has a very substantial percentage of people of African descent that in some approximates over 50% of the population. A lot of them were in the street getting their heads cracked open by that regime. So I think they need to watch these videos and stop talking all this nonsense and stupidity.
Senator Rubio, we are awaiting Angela Merkel there at the White House. When we catch a glimpse of her arriving, we'll show that to our audience. Meanwhile, the White House, via the press secretary, was just asked about the ongoing situation in Cuba. And I believe this is Jen Psaki answering a question from our own Peter Ducey just a short time ago. Listen.
Communism is a failed ideology, and we certainly believe that. It has failed the people of Cuba. They deserve freedom. They deserve a government that supports them. Instead, this has been a government, an authoritarian communist regime that has repressed its people and has failed the people of Cuba. Hence, we're seeing them in the streets.
You and your party were demanding the White House call this what it is, and demanding that of Bernie Sanders and some in the squad as well, to call out socialism, to call out communism. You just heard her say communism is a failed ideology. Do you believe that the White House is responding adequately to this?
I agree with Jen Psaki. I can't believe I'm saying that. She's exactly right. I wish they would have said that on Sunday night instead of today. But look, at least they're finally saying it. We're making some progress here, guys. It looks like on convincing them that it's okay to condemn Marxism. But at the same time, I'm hearing right now as we speak that the people driving Cuba policy in this administration are telling President Biden that the response that we should have to what happened is that we should once again lift Trump-era restrictions that did not allow the Cuban military to control the money that Cuban Americans send their relatives. Because you would send money to your relatives, they would take 10 or 15% off the top and skim it, and it would all go into their pockets so that they can repress people. And some people in the administration are telling the president what our response should be is allow them to do that again.
What would the result of that be?
To these people.
What would the result of that be?
I mean, it would be a big win. I mean, the regime would say, boy, this cracking of the heads that we did on Sunday, this killing of people on the streets really worked. All we got to do is make stuff really bad for the people of Cuba on the ground, and the administration over there is going to scramble to try to meet one of our demands in order to address it. What it would mean this. You send $1. The regime takes 10 cents of that dollar. They give you they don't give you the 90 cents in dollars. They give it to you in worthless Cuban currency. They put the dollars in their pocket as a foreign reserve. And then, by the way, all the stuff that they do sell in that country of any worth is all sold in government stores for dollars. So that's another way to get the dollars out of your hands. It is, listen, allow banks to go in there, allow a financial tech company to go in there, and we can send all the money you want to your relatives. You just can't send it through the company that's owned by the military, the regime of Cuba. You just can't send it to the people that are killing people in the streets in Cuba. That's all. And if you change that's their response to what happened on Sunday. It's a slap in the face. It's an insult to brave people that took to the streets and demanded liberty and were met with bullets and beatings and jail.
You know, Senator, you and I spent a lot of time together in 2015 and 2016 on the campaign trail, and you used to tell the story about your parents and how they emigrated from Cuba and arrived here on the shores of the United States. And how they managed to have their family live the American dream. Your father was a bartender, your mother was a housekeeper, and you've become a U.S. senator. Do you believe that if the Biden administration were to put adequate pressure on the Cuban regime now, that what we're seeing on the streets of Cuba in so many different cities, not just Havana, could be leveraged into a moment?
Yes, it's a process. It's not one day to the next. Okay, I'm not telling you this is Batista jumping on a plane in the middle of the night and taking off. It's a process. It's going to take some time. But that process has already started. What's happened is irreversible. Okay, what people don't get is that this movement you saw on the street, no one organized it. It literally started because people are fed up and they finally took to the streets in one city. It got on social media, and before you know it, it was in over 50 cities. That's unprecedented. And then people saw what the regime did to them. And that created a rupture with a regime that is irreversible. And the only question now is, whose side are we going to be on? That's the question here. Whose side are we on and who are we going to help? Which is why yesterday, on Monday, I asked the president to make internet access in Cuba a priority. Yesterday, as a follow-up to that meeting we had with the White House, we spoke to the companies that can do this. They did it in Puerto Rico after 2017 in Maria. There is a way to use federal facilities in Key West and the Dry Tortugas and Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, on the island, to provide, using these new balloons, these helium balloons, the ability to get unfettered internet access to the people on the ground in Cuba so they can talk to themselves, they can communicate with the world, and they can take action and begin to build a new country.
Senator, just highlighting what is on our screen right now, and Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, is arriving at the White House right now, where she will have a bilateral meeting with President Biden. We are told on the agenda is climate change, the COVID pandemic, and obviously a range of foreign policy issues. As we see Merkel arrive here at the White House, Senator, what would you suggest should be the top priority for their conversation?
That Nord Stream pipeline that she wants so badly and that helps Russia so much. I mean, I've spent the last 4 years being told anything that's good for Russia is because they've got compromising information on somebody. So why do they want this thing so badly? It's terrible for the region. It's terrible for our allies in NATO. It might be good for Germany in the short term, but it's short-sighted. I hope that that's on the agenda, that that's raised, that that's discussed. Why are we doing anything that helps Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, this is likely to be her last visit to the White House. She is expected to step down as chancellor with elections coming up this fall. After being there for 16 years, she's gone through 3 full presidencies and the beginning of a 4th. Senator Rubio, it's great to talk with you and spend some time. Thanks for hanging with us while we waited for the chancellor to arrive.
We appreciate the time, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.